Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, friends. We are on lesson 8 of chapter 11, and that's page 691. Now, in our past lesson, we learned a little bit about centimeters and meters. So, if you remember, there are 100 centimeters in 1 meter. And remember when we went back and we measured different objects using rulers and yardsticks? Well, that's kind of the same thing we're doing today, except for we're using metric tools. So while you could use the ruler, we're measuring in centimeters and meters. So a meter is actually about 3.2 feet. So it's a little bit longer than a yardstick. So what we're doing today is we're going to select which tool we would use to measure these objects, okay? So typically the rule is if it's something is bigger than a piece of paper, then you're going to measure that in meters. If it's smaller than a piece of paper, you're going to measure it in centimeters. So take a look at these two pictures. Now it said to draw, but I'm not going to worry about drawing, and I don't need you to worry about drawing. I just want to concentrate on the math part and understanding the tools that we're going to use to measure. So over on the left, we have a paper clip. And I've put the ruler against the paper clip, but I've used the centimeter side. So right over here, you can see there's centimeters. So this this paper clip is 5 centimeters. Okay, so things like paper clips and pencils, markers, crayons, things like that, we would use centimeters to measure those. But then you've got maybe, I don't know if you guys remember the Summer Olympics when they talk about Michael Phelps and he swam the 200 meter. So meters is what we're talking about today. Remember I said a meter is about 3.2 feet long. So when they measure swimming pool lengths, they use meters. So from here all the way to over here where they swim is a measurement in meters. So I don't know how long exactly this swimming pool is, but we're going to say we measure in meters. Okay, so keep these two things in mind as we turn to page 692 and we do a few of these problems together. Okay, at the top of the page, we read, a centimeter ruler measures smaller objects. A meter stick measures larger objects. Circle the tool you would use to measure a lunchbox. So here's our lunchbox. What would we use? Remember I said anything pretty much bigger than a sheet of paper, we would use a meter stick or a yardstick. And anything smaller, we would use a centimeter ruler, which is the same as the rulers that you have at home. If you notice your ruler, on one side it has inches, and on the opposite side of that, or above it, you'll see smaller little lines or ticks. Sometimes you can see them between the inches, but usually it's on the other side. We can see centimeters and millimeters. So we'd use a ruler to measure smaller objects. So they've circled, and I'm going to circle it as well, the centimeter ruler, or a ruler, okay? Now I don't expect you to have a meter stick at home. I do expect you to have a ruler. I hope you have a ruler. So what I'm going to do with you today is we're just going to write down what tool we would use to measure these objects, and we're not going to worry about measuring. I trust that at this point you know how to measure things, okay? You know that you need to measure it from the tip of where the object starts and to the end, and that it starts with that first line right at the 0 and it goes until the end of the object, okay? I know you can do that, but what I want you to understand today is what tool you would use. So if we're measuring the width of the door, would we use a ruler or would we use a meter stick? It would make sense if we used the larger object, right? Because we're measuring something larger. So we would use a meter stick. Okay? Now, an easel Would we use a ruler or would we use a meter stick? Same thing, right? Remember when I told you when we're measuring objects that are larger than a piece of paper, we're going to want to use the larger unit of measure. So we want to use a meter stick. Okay, what about a dry board erase marker or an eraser? What would we want to use then? Would we want to use the larger unit, the meter stick, or the shorter unit? We'd want to use the ruler. Okay, we'd want to use a ruler to measure that. Okay, so on the bottom it says, can you measure a paper clip with a meter stick? Chances are a meter stick does have those ticks to measure centimeters on it, but it would be much easier if we used a ruler. So could we? Yes. Just like we could measure this easel with a ruler, we just have to kind of stack the rulers, right? We'd have to make marks and then maybe use a few rulers to measure, but we could do it. Okay, let's turn to the next page. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on this page. If you have a ruler at home or a measuring tape and you want to go ahead and measure, you can absolutely do that. If you don't have it, we're not going to worry about it today. What we are going to worry about is what tool we would use, okay? So a paper clip. What would we use to measure a paper clip? We would use the smaller unit of measure, so we would use a ruler. So for number 5, the bookcase, do you think you would use a ruler or a meter stick? We would probably want to use a meter stick. Okay, you could use a ruler, but it would be easier to do it with a meter stick. Okay, now the length or the width of the rug here, would you want to use a ruler or would you want to use a meter stick? Remember what I said about if it's larger than a piece of paper, then chances are you want to use the larger meter stick. Okay, so we want to use a meter stick. Okay. Now again, you could use a ruler, but it would be much easier if you had a meter stick. Okay, a notebook. So remember, our rule of thumb, the piece of paper. So for a notebook, we would want to use a ruler. Okay, a paintbrush. So what would we want to measure a paintbrush with? Again, we would want to use a ruler. Okay, and that's it. We're not going to worry, or I'm not going to worry about the measure. If you have a ruler at home, or you have a yardstick at home, or even a tape measure, you could use the tape measure to measure. Okay, and you can write those down if you want. Let's turn the page and do a few word problems together. Is that what we have on the back? Yes, let's turn the page to 694. Okay, let's read number 9 together. A wall in Jim's garage is 5 meters long. He is painting 2 meters of the wall blue. He wants to paint the rest of the wall red. How many meters will he paint red? Okay, so what do we know? We know that the garage wall is 5 meters long. Okay, he wants to paint 2 meters blue. He wants to paint the rest of the wall red. So I need to find out what the rest of the wall is. Okay, again, let's start with what we know. We have 5 meters. That's the whole wall. Okay, so let's just pretend that you're in your room and you want to paint this wall. It's 5 meters long and you decide, you know what? I'm going to paint part of it blue and part of it red. So the part that I'm going to paint blue is going to be 2 meters of the wall. So since my wall is 5 meters, I'm going to subtract 2. That's the part that you've already painted. So how many do I have left to paint red? 3 meters. Okay, so our answer is 3. Okay, so let's do number 10. Let's read it together first. A sandbox is 300 centimeters long. How many meters long is it? Okay, so we have to go back and remember How many centimeters are in 1 meter? It's from our lesson from yesterday. In each meter, there's 100 centimeters. So how am I going to figure out how many meters are in 300 centimeters? Well, if I have 300s, each one is 1 meter long. So here's, let's just say, let's separate it into 100, right? So I'm going to draw a box. I'm going to put 1 meter in there, or 100 centimeters, right? I'm going to draw another box, and I'm going to put 100 centimeters in that box. I'm going to draw another box, and in this box I have 100 centimeters. Okay, so each one of these is 1 meter. So let's go back and count. 1, 2, 3. Okay, you might have done it in your head. You might have said, oh, I know, 300 centimeters. If I have 100 centimeters that equals 1 meter, that means I have 3 of them, because there's 3 hundreds in 300, right? Remember that from way lessons back? Okay, let's do number 11 together. Number 11. Allison swam 50 meters in the morning. She swam 40 meters in the evening. How many meters did Allison swim in all? So remember what in all tells us. In all tells us we are gonna add. Okay, so let's see what we're adding. If she swam 50 meters in the morning, let's highlight that. She swam 50 meters in the morning and 40 meters in the afternoon. So we need to add those two numbers together to find out the total, or find out in all how many she swam. So we have 50, we're gonna add 40, add my 10s first, that's 9, my 1s is 0, 90 meters is what she swam in all. Okay, we're not going to worry about writing our math. And that's it, guys. So I want you to go ahead and do your homework, which is page 695. Don't worry about measuring if you don't have a meter stick or a ruler. If you have a ruler and you can measure those things, then go ahead and do it. But what's more important is that you write down what tool you would use to measure and to do those word problems on the back. Okay? Make sure you take a picture and send it to me. See you on the next lesson.